Oh,
We are live. Now, before I introduce you, is this your first live?
y-
Facebook Live?
um, actually, I did one on my own, which was not very good.
Oh my goodness.
Oh,
I'm sorry about this because this time last year when I started doing Facebook Lives, I go back and look at those and I cringe.
cringe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So, no, trust me, it is a work in progress. But everyone out there, this is the perfect example of how I can remember my high school teacher from just a few years ago. This Essie Fisher, because she was the teacher that you never had to say anything to her, but she knew what you were going through, and she let you know she was there to support you. And even if we had people in chorus, they had this most phenomenal voices, they had voices that just were voices, but she treated us all like we were like number one voices and really encouraged us through a time that most high school teachers out there, is difficult for high school students. So it is my privilege and is my honor today to actually have this interview with Miss Essie Fisher, who has just launched her first book,
Yes.
Sinister Hands and Peachtree Miracles. And it talks a little bit about child abuse and so many other areas. So, Miss Fisher, tell me. I know you've been saying call you Essie, but it's just so hard not to. So I'm going to either call you Miss Essie or Miss Fisher. But tell me a little bit why this book is so important, because we both know April is Child Abuse Prevention Month. So tell
Yes.
me why this is important to you.
It's important. Well, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me on. It is such an honor and a privilege. And one of the reasons I decided to write this book is because in reviewing the statistics on child abuse, I learned, and I did this probably 2 or 3 years ago. This was in 2018. The stats for child abuse here in the United States was over 177,000. In Europe, this is according to, I think it's the um, it's the International Organization for Missing, Exploited, and Abused Children. There's 1.8 million abuse cases, and this was 2018 in Europe alone. This is in addition to the 177,000 that are in the United States. And then I was watching as the pandemic started to shut everything down. And periodically, I would hear something about the fact that abuse cases were going up because of the lockdown. Children are in the homes all the time. They didn't get a chance to go to school to give the parents a break. And parents, many out of frustration of having them underfoot all the time, having to work around trying to take care of the children and do their job, and many of them working from home. This became a problem. The frustration over trying to help them learn remotely, and it just escalated. So if you notice, not only did child abuse go up, but the suicide rate among young people. We've had kids as young as 8 and 9 commit suicide because of the abuse. So that is the reason. And as I said, I have been working on the book, and for whatever reason, I kept doing rewrites, kept putting it off. But it was like, it was crying out to me. This is the time. You've got to get that book out there because we need to make the public aware of the abuse. Sometimes it's swept under the rug. Unfortunately, now because children have not been going to school and having teachers report suspected abuse cases, the reporting is down, but the abuse has gone up. So if this book can make people aware, not just the parents, if the teachers are not seeing the children in person, maybe from reading this book, other people will start to notice the signs of child abuse. And so the main purpose of this is to help you recognize, first of all, make the public aware that there is an abuse a problem, because we can't address it if we don't admit it exists. And those statistics, that 177,000, and I'm sure it's a lot more now, every one of those children is an individual.
Yeah.
Their lives are being negatively impacted by the abuse. And in doing the research, I found that even if a child is taken out of an abusive situation, even early, sometimes they never recover from the abuse they experienced as a young child, even though they're taken out and put into a positive. On their own, they probably won't. With some help, with the right kind of help, with the right kind of support, they can gradually get better. And it's not an easy task. As you will see from reading the book, it takes a lot of dedication. And remember, at that time, we were doing this by trial and error. We didn't know what we were doing. We had never seen anything like this. But that perseverance, just saying, I'm not going to give up. And interestingly enough, because of my background and what I had gone through, this enabled me to hang in there and address it.
I mean, there's so many constant themes through your book, but before we go on, I just want to address some people have left some comments here. And this is a Facebook user. Maybe they'll let us know who their name is, but some people, they're like, hi, beautiful women. I'm so grateful to be on this live with you too. Thank you, whoever you are, for joining us.
Yes, thank you.
Julie Englehart, oh my goodness, you want to talk about an advocate for children. She does so many things. She is actually in Kentucky, I think still. She'll correct me if I'm wrong, but she says thank you for this, because I think this is so important, because the constant theme that I see throughout your book is what it means to show unconditional love. Because without that unconditional love, people in this book, including you at a time, would not stand up for people, not understanding the depthness of what they're going through. And so with that being said, I think one of the things that I took away from this book is that you think when the abuse ends, that person can just move on. But what you have been able to show us through this story that you wrote as a narrative, which is another question I'm going to ask you too in a minute. But you showed us that it doesn't end when the abuse stops. It continues, because it's almost as if it takes a part in our brain, sets up there, and stays there through every situation of our life. So at some point, and Julie's still in Kentucky, so this is great that we're getting all over. So with that being said, my question to you is, how can we help people that still suffer from abuse, even though we don't see any evidence of it anymore?
That's a good question. And I think
you did that, because you did that. You did. You did.
One thing is that we have to, You say you don't see evidence of it, but it's there. One of the things I learned early as a teacher is to pay attention. Pay attention because they do manifest the fact that the abuse is going on. As a matter of fact, and I don't want to give the everything away, but even after we adopted our son and he had been there 2 weeks, he started to tear apart all of the animals, the little stuffed animals, just defacing them. This is, and at first you think, oh, he's just maybe just rough with toys.
Yeah.
No, this was intentional. This was deliberate. And after a while, I started to look and say, no, there's a problem here. There is an anger.
Mhm.
And even though he's 3.5, he's trying to express this in some way to let you know he's hurting inside. He has been subjected to things I can't even imagine. And this is a way, his little way of trying to show that I'm angry. I'm trying to get this anger out. I don't know what to do except to show it in this way. So, in answer to your question, one of the things is we've got to pay attention to children. Don't just dismiss them as, oh, that's what kids do, or oh, they're just being rebellious, or oh, they're, and watch for patterns because they do. They manifest themselves. If you're a teacher, if you're a Sunday school teacher, if you are even remotely, watch that child when they come on the screen. If you can, look at what's going on behind them, because sometimes that tells you. And I know this is asking a lot for teachers who have in their class 25, 30, and when I was teaching, 35 students. It's hard to look at what every child is going through. But again, as a teacher, as a parent, as a football coach, as a basketball coach, look at how what they're doing on the playground. Watch for signs of physical abuse. Unfortunately, sometimes the emotional and psychological abuse is worse than the physical abuse because you can't see it. So,
Now, and that's such great advice. In fact, the other person who commented, Denise McCormick, we're actually, she also manages an educators group talking about self-care. And I want to talk about that in a minute because you talked about teachers and what they're going through. But she's the one who made the first comment. And after we're done with our Facebook Live, we're going to share that in her group as well. But
okay.
and then another comment too, wow, and wonderful. And I think what it is that a lot of times what it is for a lot of people is actually finding the resources out there to help them navigate through,
Yes.
because we all know when something doesn't feel right, but a lot of times we can't put our finger on what doesn't feel right. So we don't take that step.
Yes.
And everything. And so I think, and that's why I mentioned, I think this book should be required reading for anybody getting any degree in education, a doctorate, a master's, teaching credential, because through your story, they can understand what they're looking at. And so my question to you is, when I first started reading your story, I didn't expect it to be written as this wonderful narrative. So, in your eyes, why do you think it was important to actually, without giving it away, to give the point of
Oh,
view through
excuse me. For whatever reason, our yard man decided to show up. Let me just go and tell him I am so
Okay.
sorry.
Facebook Live. Okay, so she is going to come back, and I am going to ask her when you read this book, understand that it's written through a different point of view, and it's such a wonderfully written narrative. So, friends out there who read books for audio and Audible, you may want to definitely you want to pick up this book because it would be a wonderful read for Audible. But the point of view in which she tells it really pulls you into the story, but it also shows you how things that impact us through life can carry over to one or two generations, and why it's important to really talk about these things in your family. So, right now, since she's still telling the gardener. This is so funny.
I am
The
so
gardener
sorry.
to stop blowing. Yeah, no, that's okay. That's okay. But right
Perfect
now,
timing.
I want all of you to do, if you haven't done so already, go on, it's on my personal page. There's a link to Sinister Hands and Peachtree Miracles, Amazon, but you can go to Amazon today. Right now, Miss Essie's book is trending. It is trending on three areas, and the three areas are mental illness, dysfunctional relationships, family abuse. Right before this Facebook Live, Miss Essie's book was number 441 in mental illness, number 601 in dysfunctional relationships, and number 882 in family abuse. She has offered this book on Kindle and on paperback. So there's two ways that you can get it. I highly encourage you to get it, especially if you are an educator, if you are a child abuse survivor, if you're a child advocate. Also, too, if you know that there's things going on in your family that's gone
Yes.
on for generations, this
Yes.
is the book to get. We're going to talk about self-care in a minute. But so I don't remember what my question was, but
I'm so
here,
sorry.
somebody has something really good to say. So true. Awareness is important to find those children. They do act differently in the classroom. So this is
Yes.
obviously
Yes.
coming from a teacher, could still be coming from Denise. But sometimes, we don't realize that in the classroom that certain behaviors are because there's more there. It's not just because the student is acting out.
Yes.
So you talked about getting the awareness there. But here's what I wanted to talk about. And I touched upon this because how you choose to tell this story just blew me away. And because I was just expecting your typical memoir, but it wasn't that. It was this narrative that showed how important it is for families, especially I think that's probably why you're climbing right now in this dysfunctional relationships. It shows how important it is to talk in our families so that we can things that have impacted us not push that forward to the next generation. So without giving it away, we'll give a little bit of a teaser. Why was it important for you to tell it through that point of view the way that you did it? Because I absolutely loved it, and at the end I cried, so you owe me a box of Kleenex.
Well, one of the reasons I chose to do that, I chose it because I wanted to bring the reader just inside, as though that reader was sitting right there, experiencing that firsthand, almost like hands-on,
Yes.
if this is making sense, a
Mhm.
hands-on experience where the reader is not removed from the narrative that's going on, but I'm drawing them into it so that they see, they smell, they experience. And people who have read it said, oh my goodness, I experienced the flies and the heat
Yes.
at the beginning. And when the car is going over the road, and I knew what the area looked like. I felt as though I was there riding along in the car or in that little shotgun house where so much took place.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things, one of the reasons why I chose to do it that way. And I did four rewrites.
Wow.
Yes, till I got it where I felt it should be.
Well,
And a lot of prayers
oh,
went
well,
into
yeah,
the
yeah.
entire.
You can't do anything, especially when you are putting your heart out there and you want to make that positive change. You can't do anything, I believe, without some prayer,
Yes,
because
yes,
I mean, it guts you from the inside. But even you were talking about, that's the beginning of the book, but even at the end, I felt like I was there sitting through that speech,
yes,
and so I
yes,
mean, that's, and one of the things I said when you walked away was, there's a lot of people I'm connected with, a lot of great voiceover artists, and I'm telling them to get the book because it definitely needs to be on Audible. And I said, you need to read this book because it needs to be on Audible, because there's just so much there. You take us inside this family, and we feel that we are just the extension of the family and what's going on. But one of the other things I want to talk about too is there's one moment, and I don't know if I just related to it because it was at a time that I knew I was there with you, but didn't
yes,
understand the
yes.
magnitude of what you were going through. But there's a time where you talk about like the greatest moment of all your students giving you this keepsake that you
Mm-hmm,
most likely have today. And
mm-hmm.
but it did more than that. It taught you a little bit about self-care and
Yes,
what was happening around you. And so
yes,
one of the things I've noticed about many great teachers such as yourself is that we get so caught up in loving our students so much,
yes,
we forget that we are abandoning our self-care. So
yes.
in your opinion, because I see this, that's why this is another book for educators to read so they can see both sides of what you were going through.
Mm-hmm.
When you realize that, what steps did you take, or what steps could you suggest for teachers out there? Because self-care now is talked about a lot more, but
Yes,
still
yes.
it's not part of what we do. I mean, because when you go into education, it's because you've got that desire to
Sire.
teach and
Yes,
be there. It's not second nature to us. So I want you to
yes.
talk a little bit about that.
Okay. And that is so important. And I felt I needed to address that because I felt many times, because I was going through so much at school, in my home, trying to deal with my mother, trying to deal with my son. My daughter had sustained a severe head injury at the same time, and it was almost like the walls were closing in. And I had to stop and realize that perhaps I was using the busyness to avoid really facing the challenges. And as long as I was busy and doing this and over here doing that, I didn't have to really stop and think about it. But I was not taking care of myself. I was not eating properly. I was not getting the proper rest. And this is so important that you do this. So I had to stop and start taking time to meditate, taking time out, even if it's 15 minutes, and praying and just asking God for help to guide me, to help me through this. I started setting aside 15 minutes, just sitting down to the piano and just playing, not to learn music to teach you all in choir,
You just had to sing the right note.
but
I said that
just,
like a personal experience.
just to sit down and play, to soothe my soul, basically. Play songs that I wanted to sing. I played many of the old hymns my mother loved, just and sometimes I would play and just cry, but I needed that. And just to get away, just to have some peace, to think and to be renewed, to read my Bible and just say, okay, Lord, I think I can make it another day. And as you know, some of the situations, um, especially the chimney situation and the people showing up at the house afterwards,
Yeah.
that was probably one of my lowest points.
Uh,
And I'm so grateful that my mother was there because I don't know. I don't know what I would have done at that point. So you will reach those low points. And unfortunately, a lot of people, when they reach low points like that, they give up. That's why our suicide rate is so high. They feel that they have no one to turn to. And thank God I had my mother. And even though I was 40 some years old, I went in and I was that little girl again, needing that comfort, needing someone to hear. Even though by that time, she was suffering from dementia, but I just needed that. And this is what we need to provide for others who are suffering. And sometimes they won't tell you, but as I say, pay attention, look around. I can remember having a student that every time I saw that student, I'm thinking, okay, I need to set aside an hour for this. But there was a need for that student to talk. And even though I was busy over here doing this, I forced myself to stop doing what I was doing over here because that was stuff. This is a human being. This is a person. I need to give this person priority over the stuff I'm doing over here. So,
I love it. No, that is so great. Um, Teachers stay busy that they
yes,
ignore their own soul. Yeah, yeah. And you gave us so many as educators. You gave us so many things that we can do to make sure that we're not ignoring our own soul. And
yes.
oh my gosh, I love this comment. I love it. I love it so much. Um, so what is next for Miss Fisher?
Oh, I just, right now, I want to focus on getting the message out there.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to adjust my schedule so that I am available. I would love to speak to groups. I would love to, and I don't mind traveling. And hopefully, as the vaccine take effect and things open up, that I will be able to do that. But even virtually,
Yes.
I just want to touch people's lives in a positive way, help teachers who are struggling. And can you imagine having a class with 3 or 4 abused children in it, and each of them acting out in a different way? How's the teacher going to manage that and then take care of the others who have their own challenges? It's a difficult job. And so I'd like to share some ideas I have of managing that. Interestingly enough, when I was teaching all of this, and very few people knew what was going on, my other life, I'll say. I would put on my teacher hat when I pulled into the parking lot, and I would do that for X number of hours. But then I would leave there knowing that I've got 3 times the challenge at home. And many teachers are going through the same thing. They may not have those top challenges, but they've got other challenges. So how do they manage that. I'd love to just sit down and have conversations, hear questions, answer questions specific to them. I just returned from Dallas. I've been asked to speak to a women's group there. That's coming up. And there's a possibility that I may be speaking to a group in Washington State, um, that deals with youth and families, dysfunctional families and children. So I'm available. I feel, is my new calling. So I'm ready to help in any way I can. And if this book and what I'm doing through this book can save even one life or help one family, it's worth it. So,
Wow. And I'm going to reshare the link to your website because what you do with journaling is another way of self-care. So
yes, it
we
is.
definitely um, have to come back together and talk a lot more about the journaling
Okay,
because
I'd love that.
that's really important too.
I love that, as well as the genealogy research and so forth.
Yes,
Yes,
which definitely worked. I mean, you can see that even in your book too.
yes.
So, and there's a bunch of groups out there too as well. So, yes,
Right.
I don't see you really resting anytime soon.
I'll make it. You know what? I'll rest in between.
Yeah.
But I'm just so thankful that at this stage of my life, God has sees fit to use me
Yes.
to impact lives and help others. And so I feel this is what I was put here to do. So,
Absolutely, absolutely. You're definitely living your legacy. And Denise, who is in her own right, she's this amazing educator, and she actually runs the
thank you.
educators self-care group. She wants to thank you
Okay.
too. She said we needed this right now, and I'm going to make sure that all video gets into this group as well too. So
Okay.
maybe hearing from people you never heard from before, but
All right.
Denise, just like you, felt she needed to do something to reach out to educators and talk about self-care. So this is a perfect connection. So I'll make sure to connect both of you.
All
But
right.
thank you so much for following your heart and coming back to the story so that you can release it during a time that we really need it. So
Yes.
thank you so much.
You're
And
welcome.
again, um, even if you catch this Facebook Live on a replay and do it today, reshare the link for this book. Buy the book. You can get the ebook. You can get the book sent to you through Amazon because we want to pour in to our teacher that poured into us even when she was going through her own. So you're going to find that out. So definitely want to support our teacher right now and buy her book today because tomorrow we want to see her say, I am a best-selling author. So we can help her do that right now. So buy the book today, everyone, and reach out and share this video. But most importantly, know that you are not alone. So
Yes.
whatever you are going through, there are
Yes.
so many people out here. There's Miss Essie, there's myself. I'm connected to so many wonderful people that are there so that you don't feel that you're alone. And so definitely do that. I know we're getting to the end of something that's been a really big year for a lot of us,
Yes.
but know that you're not alone. And this book lets you feel that you're not alone as well. So thanks everyone for tuning in. And we're going to have Miss Essie back because I want her to talk about this journaling. It's so neat. So
Thank you.
take
Thank you so
care.
much for having me.
You're welcome. We're going to have you again. Take
Okay.
care.